Hello and welcome to The Agenda with me, Graham Hughes, and Phil Moorhouse. How you doing, Phil?
You all right, thank you. Yes.
Yeah? What's happening with your penguins there? The penguins taking over?
It's World Penguin Day today.
Is it World Penguin Day today?
It is World Penguin Day.
That is
you've travelled the world. You've seen more penguins than I have. What's your favourite penguin?
My favourite type of penguin? An emperor penguin. So there was a picture. One of my friends, her dad was, he was a doctor. And he worked for a while in the Antarctic, on one of the bases there. Right, a doctor there. And there's a picture of him from the 1950s, and he's holding a baby emperor penguin, and it's like this one. It's huge. It's like this big, and it's this it's this huge, incredibly cute, furry penguin baby. But they're huge, they're massive, they're brilliant. So that's probably my favourite. Good old emperor. What's your favourite?
Well, I'm not a huge fan of penguins because they're incredibly stupid animals, but I'm just showing solidarity because Trump's been mean to them. But I will have to say the emperor penguin as well because I like their chocolate biscuits.
Yeah, they do make great chocolate biscuits. So
and they put jokes on them as well. They've got a good sense of humour.
They do. They're very funny. Anyway, just a top question, right, for the show. Farage wants to run your council. Can Labour stop him?
It's a combination of Labour and the Conservatives really going to struggle at the end of the day. The Conservatives the Conservatives are not even trying because they're now openly saying that they should form an alliance with Reform UK.
Yeah.
You've had Robert Jenrick saying it, and Badenoch not only refusing, but some Tory MPs want him sacked for it. Not only is she refusing to sack him for it, which I agree would be potentially make things worse for her, but she's not even rebuking him. So she's too weak because she is quite clear that they're two separate parties and there should be no. But she's so weak she cannot stop members of her front bench going off piste.
Yes.
And Ben Houchen as well has been saying the same thing. So the Conservatives are not even putting up a challenge to them. But Labour as well, some of it is self-inflicted, but some of it to an extent was always going to be like this because the policy, they were never going to be able to... The Tories, let us not forget what we were saying before the election. The Tories spent a good 2 years salting the earth. Knowing that they were going to lose, salting the earth, making everything as shit as possible, including leaving a massive hidden cowpat in the form of, the black hole, which, although people will argue about exactly how big that hole in the budget was, it exists. The OBR said, yes, the Treasury lied to us about the state of the finances, and had we known the real finances, we would not have endorsed that budget, that last Jeremy Hunt budget. So they spent
a black hole.
Yeah, they spent this massive amount. They did everything they could to make things as shit as possible. So you weren't going to be able to turn it around overnight. Then you've got Trump's madness as well. So there was an extent to which there'd be a lot of people saying we were promised change. We don't see. People are seeing some of the change in the NHS. That is noticeably better. But by and large, people are not seeing the change yet. So there's a sense in which, obviously, Labour have to pay for their policies before they get the benefits.
Yeah.
So there's an extent to which...
Phil, this is the thing. I will stop you there. But Trump, RefUK, the Brexit campaign, they didn't have to deliver anything. They just promised mad shit that they had no intention of delivering. I don't understand why Labour can't understand that it's more important to make people feel like they're better off rather than to wait for them to feel they're better off. You've got to tell them. You've got to, this incredible stuff we've done. The fact that
just going to do.
The waiting list came down and they didn't even make a fuss about it. No one mentioned it.
Well, they did mention it. Because it's like I was saying for years, they can't just turn on social media when it comes to campaign time. Yep. They've got to be doing it all the time to build up an audience.
That's what they do.
And that's the thing, because they did try and boast about the NHS improvements. They put it on all their social media stuff. No one saw it because they haven't built up an audience.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Talking of audiences, just a big shout out to Pete's Music and to SG and to Diz and One Angry Pagan and Martin Harrow and John Lockwood and others, including Duke Vengeance in there. Listen, if you would like to join our friends in the chat here, we're all friends here. All you need to do is hit that subscribe button and wait for about a minute, and then you'll be able to put your word, and they'll magically pop up on the screen as we're talking. But don't be a troll, or we will mute you and boot you. Anyway, sorry, Phil. I sort of interrupted there. We were talking about
it doesn't matter. I just said there's a question there. Comms. Yeah. It's the age-old thing. There's a question there from Sound about any news on Andrea Jenkins' eligibility. So she's supposed to be facing... So she's been accused of not actually living in the area and therefore not being eligible, right? Because she lives in Leeds, which is where she was an MP. I don't know whether it's true or not. There's supposed to be some sort of meeting to decide it next week. I wouldn't get anyone's hopes up. First of all, it would be an act of gross stupidity on both Jenkins and Reform UK's part if she didn't tick all the boxes, because it would, if she didn't meet any eligibility criteria, it would have been pointed out. So I suspect she will be eligible. And even if she wasn't, do you know what? It wouldn't stop Reform UK. They would just have to rerun the election, and Reform UK had put another arsehead in the place, and they would win. Because, I mean, looking at the polling, I'm afraid to say this. I mean, how have we got into this position? Lincolnshire is very sort of Tory in a lot, like it's got its Labour areas, but it's got a lot of Tory areas as well. I was hoping that Reform and Conservatives would split the vote, Labour would come through the middle. And maybe they will, because the problem, so people may have seen the YouGov polling on this. The problem with that polling is it's very difficult to take account of, even though YouGov are pretty good at it, how many people will actually turn out and vote. So although it looks horrendous, it looks like Reform UK are going to walk it, and they probably will. Depending on numbers turning out, who knows? So it looks like actually we're in a position where the Conservative is the tactical vote, for Christ's sake. And yeah, but then if turnout is much lower and therefore these polls are much less like, my problem is I'm thinking the Reform UK voters are the ones who are going to turn out, and that Labour and Conservative voters are the ones who are going to be less interested in doing it. So and the thing is that has knock-on effects for the council election as well, because I'll guarantee you anyone going out to vote for the mayoral contest and local elections at the same time, like I'm just voting the mayoral contest, there's no local elections where I am, but there's other areas that do have local elections, so they'll vote on both. I don't think there's very many people who are going, oh, I'll vote for Party A for the mayoralty and Party B for the councils. Most people don't even know what a council does or the mayor does. So they're just going to use the same vote. So the fact that in my sort of part of the world, Yorkshire and the Humber, that Reform UK look like they're going to absolutely walk it, also suggests that the local elections up for grabs, they're going to get a load as well, which is really bad news.
Which is a little bit of a worry, to put it mildly. So yeah, I just wanted to address something that was said by Tommy Lee Cadden in the chat. Said, "Oh God, Andrea Jenkins is from Leeds as well. I just found out Lawrence Fox is from here as well. Well, so is Jimmy Savile and the Yorkshire Ripper, Peter Sutcliffe. Yeah. All the Leeds posse. You know,
to be fair,
what have we got in Liverpool? We've just got the Beatles."
I got Ken Dodd. He was all right. He did fill his taxes a bit though.
Did he pay and did he help?
Taxes? He did. But Leeds is a bit feral, you know, as a city. You
can say that as a Yorkshireman. I couldn't possibly comment.
It is. I went there. There was one time because I used to have to go quite regularly with former partner to sort of take her for like her Open University stuff. So I'd have a little wander around Leeds. Yeah. And one time I was in the post office, and the post office manager tried to move someone up the queue for some reason. I don't know why. They didn't just complain; they were ready to lynch him.
Oh wow!
And my favourite ever time of seeing this sort of behaviour in Leeds was actually when I was a kid, and I was walking along the street. My mum, obviously, we're all just out in Leeds, and heard this big smash behind me. Turned around, so one car had come out of a junction, smashed heading into another one. Yeah. This bald fella in one of the cars, I don't even know whose fault it was, just jumped out, absolutely raging, pulled the other guy out of the car and started beating him up. Oh, so, Leeds is a funny place.
Well, Yeah.
It's where the werewolves come out before the moon comes out.
Well, yeah, I've got to say, been to a lot of festivals. I've been to a lot of festivals around the world, not just in the UK. And I've never been to a festival that has not only had a riot on the Sunday night, but has a regular riot at the end of the festival every year, like the Leeds Festival. It's the only one. Yeah, it's for Sunday night. Sunday night, it's riot time. Quick, everyone.
Yeah.
Let's have a riot. Fair enough. I'm being told that Yorkshire Ripper was born in Bingley, not Leeds. Yeah, but it's just right. Honestly, it's a stone's throw away. What do you guys put up your pants? Is it whippets? It's a whippet throw away.
Ferrets go down the pants.
All right, ferrets. It's a ferret.
I'll stick a whippet down there.
It's a ferret throw away. I don't know what you do in Yorkshire. You just, I don't know.
I actually don't know anyone who has put ferrets down the pants. I have known people who've had ferrets.
Yeah,
but it was a thing apparently. Ferrets down the pants.
It was, but as a citizen of the former historical borough of Lancashire, I'm afraid that Yorkshire's just, it is a bit feral, isn't it? It's the wrong side.
No, just Leeds. Everywhere
wrong
else
side
is
of the Pennines.
Obviously, everywhere else at the moment is not going to be fine because they're about to do something incredibly stupid. So they first of all voted for Brexit to make their living standard much worse. Now they're voting for the people who persuaded them to do that damn silly thing.
Yeah. If I was Labour, right, what I'll say is, the people in Scunthorpe, I'll say, vote for us, or we're going to shut down your blast furnace.
Yeah, you can't do that. I mean, you can get away. I don't know how Trump's getting away with behaviour like that in America, even though judges are trying to stop him. But he doesn't seem to be paying any attention. He lost about 6 court cases just yesterday alone, didn't he?
I know, but it doesn't matter because he's above the law.
No.
He's like Judge Dredd. He is the law. The stupid law. But yeah, we can't get too distracted. But is there anything Labour can do? Like, can we talk about possible solutions to this problem at this point? I just got a letter.
At this point, no.
I just got a letter from my Labour Labour friends, basically saying we're really in trouble with reform. Would you mind making some phone calls on Saturday to get people online? And I dread it. I dread calling people up and saying, "Will you vote for Labour?" I know what they're gonna say. They're gonna say, but they said they were gonna do all this boss stuff and they haven't.
Well, I wouldn't mind that sort of response because I could then tell them all the stuff that they have actually done that they're just not being told about. But in the here and now, there's not a lot they can do. But what they do need to do for the long term is they do need to sort their comms out. They must understand that the media are not going to promote their stuff. They're not going to. Even the stuff the media sort of agree with them on, they're not helping Labour out. They're still attacking Labour on. Like, they can't win. And it's a bit like, just as a parallel thing. One of the reasons why it's been reported, Trump's done a lot of his climbing down this week, is because he's finally realised that although he wants to bring a lot of manufacturing back to America, it requires a lot of rare earth metals, which China controls 80% of, and China have been restricting access to American companies from. So they've sort of realised they're a bit bound. And it's a similar thing here. If Labour are in a situation where they're so heavily reliant on the mainstream media know they've got one over them. Whereas what they really should do is use their own lines of communication. I mean, last month alone, in the last 4 weeks, I was looking, I had over 800,000 unique viewers watching some of my content.
Wow.
And it's,
that's very impressive.
And most of them are in Britain. And obviously, Labour are going to be interested in the ones based in the UK, most of them in the UK. But, I mean, do you think about the sheer... The potential to get a direct message out to people that they are just... And every other progressive party is completely ignoring.
Yeah.
Absolutely ignoring. Yeah. So, although some of what Labour is doing... is policy related. Some of their policies, though, are being misrepresented when people say they cancelled the winter fuel allowance. No, they didn't. And also, I noticed the Tory media don't seem to come up with those. But some of their policies obviously have genuinely pissed a lot of people off. And also, I mean, when you're talking about things like the disability policies, they particularly affect areas like the North Midlands and the north of England because there are more people. More people are dependent on the public sector in these areas because it's not exactly bustling hubs of innovation and industry anymore. So, you know, you're not just hurting the people directly affected, but the wider economy.
Yeah.
And, you know, so some of their policies are responsible and they need to take responsibility
but also
for that.
they're not fighting back. They're just standing there getting hit in the face time and time again.
Well, they think
fight back. It's like Raging Bull.
Yeah, they think. I think. I mean, that's speculation on my part. I think because they think that nationally, Reform UK are even now still taking more votes off the Tories than Labour, that it'll work out fine from the general election when they'll also have a lot of benefits to show. The problem is it's not just about general elections. Yes, that's the priority. That's the absolute priority. But they also want to win mayoral contests and they also want to do well in local elections, even if they don't care about the work council's doing. Even though Labour are giving councils now and mayors more power, so you'd think they'd be a bit more invested in making sure people didn't vote for cretins. They need them to provide their ground operation come the general election.
Yeah, yeah. Have you cancelled your membership with Labour?
Yeah. Not as a protest thing as such, although the trans thing was the straw that broke the camel's back. It's actually mostly the reason is their attitude towards tactical voting. Because I just thought to myself, do you know what? We're going to need a lot more promotion of tactical voting in the next few years. I did think it might die away a little bit, and it's not going to, is it? Like, for example, you look at some of this polling now and you think, so Lincolnshire's probably lost, but if you look at the polling for Hull, if there was tactical voting there, Reform UK could be beaten.
Yeah. So Lincolnshire,
although you wouldn't know.
Andrea Jenkins, she's looking at 40% versus Tory 25%, Labour 15%.
Yeah. I will say these figures will be wildly inaccurate because of low turnout. They'll be low turnout. Yeah.
Well, the polling averages up to the 20th of April, latest I've got from YouGov. Reform on 25%, Labour on 23%, Conservatives on 21%, Lib Dems on 14%, and the Greens on 10%. There's 1,641 council seats up for grabs on the 1st of May, on Thursday. That's 23 councils, mostly previously Tory held, 4 regional mayors, 2 local mayors, 1 by-election in Runcorn and Helsby. And RefUK are fielding 99% of possible council candidates this time, a massive jump compared with 12% last year.
Yeah, because their vetting's a load of crap. They said they're vetting.
And some of the people who have got through the net, we should talk about that in a moment, actually. The posted some
really worse than Trump.
Horrific stuff online. Yeah. Now, County Durham, where I am, Labour lost control of the council here in 2021, and RefUK are targeting 50 wins here to take the control outright. I had someone deliver a RefUK candidate to my door yesterday. I scrumpled it up and gave it back. Said, "Oh, you got this, mate." He was getting paid, by the way. I asked him if he was getting paid to deliver leaflets, and he said, "Yeah." Some young lad.
I wonder if they're declaring that.
Well,
because normally the reason why you need a lot of volunteers is because it's not just that it's expensive. You're only allowed to spend so much.
Yeah, I know. But, you know, the handlers in Moscow and the Kremlin, they've got unlimited resources and very, very deep pockets. For the Runcorn and Helsby by-election, Labour are still the favourites, but RefUK are making it awkward, to say the least. And nationally, Labour is bleeding support to the left, to the Greens, and to the right with RefUK. You know, we talked about this already, but the comms are just abysmal. It's like they've forgotten there's a local election coming up. I've heard nothing. I've got this letter. Right. I got this yesterday. So these are 2 people who are standing in my constituency, Anne Bonner and Nick Rippon. You probably know by now, but there are a range of candidates standing in Brandon, including 2 Reform candidates. The latest polling shows that Reform stand to do very well in County Durham during these elections. I mean, you know, this is this is official Labour stuff coming to me as a member saying, yeah, I think Labour, I think RefUK are going to whip our asses in this. Help.
Yeah.
And this comes less than a week before the election. It's like, where was this? Where was this in January? You know, why aren't they?
I don't think they're thinking in these. I think they're just thinking in terms of the general election, and that is it. And they're not really seeing. And it's not just about, you know, if you lose councillors, you also lose the people who organise your grassroots support for the general election. You know, if Reform UK do well, like if Reform UK don't do well, then that's actually a massive blow for Nigel Farage, because then people will say, well, where's this momentum? Then it all seems to be a bit of a damp squib. But if he does do well, or can even claim that he's done well, then it's like he carries on with this idea that Reform UK are going to form the next government. And it will build up that belief that Reform UK are a credible party who can jump from like 5 MPs in one general election to like 300 odd in the next. You know, and there's a strategic failure in Labour's thinking. You know, I don't know. I don't know whether it's because Morgan McSweeney is just doing everything, whether he's organising their general campaigning as well as government strategy or the rest of it. I don't know whether they're just not delegating enough or don't have enough teams looking at different facets of it. But for whatever reason, they're not taking their communication seriously. If they are, then it's hideously incompetent and they honestly need to sack a load of people. They are not taking these local elections seriously when it's very, very important to build a narrative. There was a group of Labour MPs recently reported to saying that Starmer needs to take some lessons from Trump. Now, they don't mean go for mass deportations and trade war with the world. What I suspect they mean is Trump is very boastful. He's constantly talking about all the great things he's going to do, even amongst the carnage of his platform policy. He's talking about all these great times that are coming. Starmer should have done the same thing, because the thing is as well, Starmer and Reeves can boast about things that will actually get experts saying, yeah, this is valid, you know. And I don't know why they didn't. They had this period straight after the election when it was all very positive and they went up in the polls. Then you had the riots, couldn't do anything about that. Then afterwards, it was all doom and gloom about the economy. They just spent months talking about how shit the economy was. And what they should have been doing is saying, this is what we're going to do to make this better. So we're going to do this to sort out river pollution. We're going to do this to sort out the NHS. We're going to do this to sort out policing. We're going to do this to sort out, you know, immigration, whatever. Housing, energy. They should constantly be talking about all the great times that are coming. And that would have carried them through. And it's like they've got to this point where they're still stuck in this mindset of under promise and over deliver. That was in opposition and it sort of worked. But now in government, they have to it's like in opposition, you have to keep saying how shit the country is because you want people to agree with that and change over. Once you're in government, you have to start saying how great it is now. People wanted that change really quickly, unreasonably quickly. So Labour needed to give the impression it was coming immediately. And some of it has. The NHS stuff, that's real. Although you can't see the impact on water quality yet, the law is now in place to put water company executives in prison if they try to conceal illegal dumping. They have now got to actually monitor all sewage outflows. So they cannot now just dump on a dry day. And these are things that they've already done, and there's still a load of things still coming. And they should constantly be talking about, this is what's going to happen. We're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And keep people's eyes on the prize. Keep saying, yes, it takes time, but we've already progressed really quite well. Constantly keep doing reports. We have this idea that Keir Starmer has this attitude that he doesn't want to keep imposing on people, that they're sick of politicians, and he doesn't want to keep making big announcements. Like, he's not imposing himself on people. If people don't want to listen to what the Prime Minister says, do you know what? They just won't watch the pissing news. But people who want to watch the news, they're going to listen to someone. Political journalists are not going to say, well, I'll just go on holiday for 3 months while the Prime Minister decides to say something. if the Prime Minister doesn't say something, they'll just report on something else. So it's actually conceding the public narrative to not. He should be imposing himself. He should constantly be coming out and saying, "This is what we've done. This is what we've done today." He could say, "Be boastful like Trump. We're going to do this thing. It's going to be brilliant." Trump was claiming he'd already done all sorts of things that, of course, he hadn't. He's got no power to do. Doesn't matter. Like Labour could have done that with things they are actually doing. It's annoying.
Yeah, I was just looking up while you were talking there. Yeah, stopthetories.vote is still working, and now it's also including stopping RefUK as well. So you can have a look at that. Diz was asking if it's still active. It is, and it still seems to be working to a reasonable degree. But yeah, this smacks of deeper problems for Labour going forward. Because lots of people, I mean, in the chat, we've got people saying, Labour have lost me. Labour have lost me, especially over two major things: the disability reform and the trans rights.
The problem there is that is not going to cause a problem for the general election, which is actually part of my argument on the trans thing, particularly that it's not a voting issue, so there was no reason for them to do this. But the communications is a more serious problem. They're going to win the next election. I will bet which buttock shall I bet? I'll bet my right buttock on that one. So they are going to win the next election. They are going to get a majority. That's going to be fine. Reform UK are capitalising on the fact that the Tories are not even tried, which may well still be the case in a few years' time.
What if they team up?
But the people.
Because we've discussed this before, and you're like, they're never going to team up, and then you've got the guy who's waiting in the wings to become the next leader of the Tory party once Badenoch is showing the marching orders. And he's already said, Robert Jenrick, he said, maybe there's something there.
No problem, because there's plenty of people in Reform UK who hate the Tories and plenty of people in the Conservative Party who stuck with them who hate Reform UK. The ones who hate the Tories in Reform UK, some of them may stick out. In fact, it's actually quite interesting. I was told to read this thing about Trump. There's an economist who wrote a book decades ago. And it's about what people do when they're dissatisfied with something, usually a company. But it can apply to a political party. And you've got three options. You've got voice, exit, and loyalty. So some of them, we can already see in Reform UK, some of them are already chuntering about like the treatment of Rupert Lowe or Tommy Robinson, stuff like that. Some of them will remain loyal. They'll hold their nose and go, okay, well, for the greater good. But some of them will just leave. And in Reform UK, no. They'll leave because they're working with the Tories and they're anti-Tory. You've got to remember, I keep saying, although Reform UK are openly a right-wing party, they are directly appealing to left-wing voters as well as right-wing voters. Those left-wing voters do not want to, particularly in this part of the country, do not want to vote for the party of Thatcher. So it doesn't matter that it won't be a Conservative candidate standing. It'll be a Reform UK candidate in these areas. They know it will be with the purpose of forming a government with the Conservative Party. And some of those voters will then switch back to, and Labour will be showing them improvements anyway. The people are already noticing the improvements to the NHS. They will notice other improvements as well.
I think it's going to be really difficult for Labour to set out their stall. I think they've left it too late. No clear slogans, no emotional resonance.
That's irrelevant. People
waffle. That's all we've got so far from them.
But people will notice the improvements. They will notice the improvements.
I honestly, mate, I think people aren't that. They don't notice a gorilla walking through a room.
They are already. I talk to a lot of gammons. I live right in the middle of them. They are already noticing the improvements to the NHS without me prompting them, and they still hate Labour and Starmer. But when they notice other things, they will notice. They can't not notice in an area like this. It's so shit. So they will. But sorry, I forgot what I was saying now. What was I going on about? I lost my train of thought.
We were talking about why the RefUK people, if they...
that's right. So those Reform UK voters, these are people who voted Labour in the past. They'll vote Labour again, right? So I'm not saying all of them, but enough of them, right? And then in other parts of the country, those Conservatives with a small c who will have nothing to do with Reform UK, they'll just go to the Lib Dems. And the Lib Dems aren't pissing anyone off. was against the Lib Dems.
Well, Chris C says Labour is supposed to be standing up for the rights of ordinary people, not throwing us under the bus in the blind hope of attracting some gammon votes. And you know, you just mentioned this yourself, like the trans, the fact that they didn't stand up to the Supreme Court and said, we think the Supreme Court's made a mistake, and you know what, we're in government, we've got a 200-seat majority, we're going to change the law, we're going to amend the Equalities Act, and we're going to make it very clear that trans women are women.
Yeah, well, I mean,
why would they do that?
It would, so first of all, you wouldn't do the first bit. That would be dead wrong. You don't say this. You don't say a court's got it wrong. That's the sort of thing. That's Trumpism.
Okay.
What you say is
that
the law.
Then.
No, that's still criticising an independent court. What you say instead is we're just going to tidy up the legislation.
Yeah.
No fault on the judges. They've made their judgment. Right. Okay.
Yeah. So we'll tidy up that legislation.
So we will make sure that it's now interpreted this way. Yeah. Now, I've already said it's a strategic error. What they're doing is they're looking at polling that shows, people should not kid themselves that this is against public opinion. Public opinion is very, very transphobic now. And it has developed that way over the last few years.
Because of 1,000 odd anti-trans stories in the Telegraph every day.
Precisely. But it's not a voting issue for people. So
it's going to lose them any votes. It's going to gain them votes from people in the trans community. And
it's not going to gain any votes at all for Labour. It can lose some, as you say, because the people for whom it is a voting issue are people who are trans or who know someone who is trans.
Exactly. So you just look at how many people were outside the Supreme Court last week. There was a handful of people with their champagne, looking like a bunch of clocky bastards. And then, you know, you had tens of thousands of people turn out in London last week.
Yeah.
That's your difference there. It's a very niche thing to be one of these rampant transphobes for which the existence of trans people takes up your entire, you know, your existence is just freaking out in the middle of the night. The trans people exist.
But anyway, but
there's about 10 of them in the whole country. Unfortunately, they were very well funded by the world's richest author, but
well, it's not just her. Not just her.
Heritage Foundation. The same people who backed that court case for 4 women in Scotland are the exact same backers that backed Trump, a rapist, to get into the White House.
Yeah, it's
and
always
the same people who backed the Supreme Court justices who got rid of Roe versus Wade in America.
Yeah, because no billionaire hates trans people. They don't care about trans people. They don't ever have to meet one. Same as they don't care. They don't hate immigrants. It's just a useful way. What they hate is the fact that 68 million of us on this island have got some human rights.
Yeah. But what's dead wrong about what happened last week and the fact that Labour's response this week to it, Starmer not saying anything for days and then finally saying, oh, go along with the court judgment. We welcome the clarity when it's made everything very, very, very much unclear.
What it's done.
So self-evident to me, what you just said about they don't really care about trans people, they don't really care about immigrants. But they see this as a means to an end. What is the end? Getting us out the European Court of Human Rights. That's what they want. And they will use this because they know this is going to go to the ECHR.
Yes, at some point there will be a direct conflict. Someone will bring a case and win it with the European Court of Human Rights. Because remember, Labour are not even backing the Supreme Court judges. The Supreme Court judges made it clear that this doesn't allow for the discrimination. They didn't say trans people aren't real. They referred to trans people in the judgment. So, and various lawyers have said, look, it's talking about, we're talking about protected spaces. That was always the case anyway. But where necessary, it doesn't apply to any single sex space. So it shouldn't apply to toilets. That is an over interpretation of the judgment. It's not supposed to apply to toilets because that's not a necessary protected space. I can just walk into a woman's toilet anytime I like. Yeah. I'm not going to. I don't even like walking into men's toilets, quite frankly. I piss everywhere. But, so it's Labour have completely abandoned trans people over it. They have decided that they are going to focus on that. And it's because of the fragmentation of the vote. When you have, because any party, it's just the nature of the beast. You can only get a small number of messages out in a campaign. Although I will put a caveat onto that. And so you can only target like 2 or 3 types of voter. You rely on most of your voters just turning out for you, in the knowledge that your policies are going to be better for them, which is, fair enough. The problem is with the fragmentation of the vote, instead of what you would have done in the past, focusing on a couple of groups of voter who will just about swing it for you, you've got to find large groups of voter now that all vote the same way, but there's a lot of them in the areas you need to target. And that, unfortunately, is these ones who are left-wing. They want strong public services, they want good workers' rights, all the stuff that Labour are delivering. But they're not very liberal, and they're quite monocultural. They live in this sort of little Englander type of world. Yeah. But what Labour are not distinguishing is what they should be doing. They'll have their own internal polling that'll be way more detailed than anything we've got. But what it sounds to me like, they're gauging public reactions to things. I think they also put too much emphasis on focus groups as well. They use those. I think they use those too much. What the idea of a focus group is, so that you can get very detailed responses. Then you use it to form a hypothesis, and then you test that hypothesis out with a proper survey. Okay. I think Labour, from what I keep hearing, keep taking focus group results as a conclusion in itself, which is not what they're for. But anyway, so they're doing all their polling anyway, internal polling. What they're not exploring is, but would this change your vote? Because if they did, they would find out on trans issues, the answer would be, well, no, it's not that important to me because I don't actually know any trans people.
Yeah, but they've alienated a lot of young progressive voters with this stance, which is mirroring the stance of the Tories. Don't, on pretty much any issue, I mean, maybe a national defence as an exception, but you don't really want to be on the side of the Tories on one of these issues where you're on one side or the other. And Labour are managing to come down on the side of the Tories on things like, what's the best way to get the economy back on track? Oh, we'll cut disability benefit. And everyone's looking at them going, I don't know about that. Can we talk about Morgan McSweeney a little bit? Because I don't really know much about him. He's supposed to be the Dominic Cummings of the left. He's a lad who grew up in Ireland. He's Irish, isn't he?
Yes, he's Irish, yeah.
I think his grandfather was in the IRA. He seems to. He's now the chief of staff, isn't he?
Yes.
He took over from Sue Gray.
Yeah.
And he is. He's absolutely hated by a lot of people that I've met who are in politics and on the left wing of politics. They absolutely.
I think its problem is that he's obviously really good at organising. He's organised 2 very successful campaigns.
Which were.
So in the first place, sort of, he was providing when Corbyn was leader, he was providing a sort of counter to momentum. And then after the by-election failure in 2021 and the Tories clean up in the local elections, he then took over Labour's general campaign. And both of those worked really well up to a point. The problem is that he's now been put in charge of. First of all, I think he made mistakes. He did really well up until about the middle of 2023, and then they started to panic on a few issues. So I don't think he's really up on interpreting polling results well. That's always a big failing because most people in politics do not have a mathematical background, so they always misinterpret polling. But that's why you're supposed to employ people who can actually tell you what it means and where the weaknesses in it are. Not just what the conclusions are, but how likely the conclusion. Because you can draw a conclusion from polling, but then say, but it's only about 20% accurate because you didn't actually do the polling very well. So you also need people to not only tell you what you can and can't read into the polling, but how strong that polling is for the question you were asking. And they've got the funds to do that. Like the Conservatives can't. You can understand them making an arse of it, but Labour have got the funds to do that. Yeah. And I'm not sure they do. I think I think they use focus groups too much and don't understand what you can and can't use a focus group for.
Okay, but who is he? He's a guy who came up through the ranks of a Labour member, I guess, and then
It's just a good campaign. It's just someone who was good at putting a campaign on. It doesn't mean to say he's good at running effectively a government strategy. You know, it's
a good question for Chris C. It says, why do we vote for MPs when it's the advisors that seem to be running the government?
Well, I mean, obviously the politicians are responsible. Like we can moan about McSweeney all we like. Starmer is responsible, but at the same time, it does make sense that because your politicians don't have to be qualified in anything, and very often are not qualified in what they're in charge of. There's a few exceptions. You do quite frequently have an actual lawyer in charge of the Justice Department, but by and large, you don't. Like the Defence Secretary doesn't have to have been a veteran, and the Health Secretary doesn't have to have been a doctor or nurse.
Yeah. No, I get that. I get that.
So you are reliant, therefore, on expert advice.
Okay.
So, and because particularly Starmer, because he's not got any political inclinations, really, he's not a natural politician. He is going to lean on advice. He's going to get people around him whom he trusts for the advice, and he is going to put a lot of weight on it, which is fine as long as you've hired the right people. Now, the problem is, I see it as a bit like the Peter Principle. McSweeney was very successful at a particular job, and he's now been given a different job. And yet Starmer has put a lot of faith in him doing it. And it's like, but he hasn't proven himself in it. And I actually think it's, I think it's very bad. I keep hearing people say, oh yeah, the operation is much more professional now since McSweeney took over. Is it bollocks? Is it bollocks?
Well, yeah, this is something about like Sue Gray was hated, wasn't she? Like that she was kind of handed out.
Because she was an outsider.
Yeah, but then they got this other guy, and people seem to hate him as well. Is it possible to have that? Is this the same role that Alistair Campbell had back in the day?
No, he was a spin doctor, not chief of staff.
Is this one of the roles where you get like everyone just hates you for being?
No, absolutely not.
So could they get someone in who's a little less controversial?
They just need to get someone in who understands that you can't just have this attitude of don't worry about how unpopular you are in the first couple of years, it'll all come good later. You know, you should be, it is the job of a politician to be constantly popular. Constantly popular. Yeah. Because once you lose popularity, you're not guaranteed to get it back. Now, it is true, there's an awful lot of voters who are not paying attention to politics right now. I'm going to keep saying this. Labour's missteps are not going to screw them over at the next general election, but the lack of attention to the constant campaign is going to screw them up later on.
Well,
because like Starmer's not going to be around. Huh?
They don't seem to understand that a lot of how we feel about things isn't logical, and I don't know how to explain this to them because they're like, no, does not compute. I'm like, most people vote with their gut. And your gut's stupid. Your gut tells you to go and get a kebab after drinking a skinful at the Jacaranda. Like, it's an idiot thing, right? Lizard brain. And
yes, it is.
It does defy logic. It's how people feel. That's why people voted for Trump. That's why people
we know that a lot of people decide their vote on the way to the polling station. It is just that's why
people don't care about politics either. But before we go on, sorry, Phil, hold that thought because we had the super chat, first super chat of the show. Woo! Witchy Goth, because I'm feeling generous, Graham. Oh, thank you, Witchy Goth. That's very kind of you. We've got 50 seconds to try and hit our target of 9 more super chats. So good luck. But yeah, anyway, Phil, sorry, what were we saying?
I was just,
it's with the guts.
Yeah, they do, and it's why you have to constantly be boastful in politics, like. And I get how some people are. I mean, I'm embarrassed, at self-promotion, things like that. So other people will be as well. But you have to in politics. You've got to constantly be hyping the hell out of what you're doing and hyping the hell out about what you're going to do.
Yeah, it's all
constantly.
Marketing. It's all advertising. That's why. Yes. Who was supporting Thatcher? Saatchi and Saatchi. Do you know what I mean? The biggest advertising company in the 1980s. They were a massive Tory partner. They got money off the Tory party to do their campaigns. Do you remember the Labour isn't working with the line of people? Yeah. That was Saatchi and Saatchi.
It was. What had happened was in the 70s, they had this really good campaign for some tyre. I can't remember which tyre now. And basically the Tories went, right, we'll have some of that in politics. But this is, again, it's like they need to do the sort of modern equivalent now. You've got politicians who they need to use like social media better. They need to get people to help them do that.
Yeah.
And they cannot just expect to turn it on at the election by getting some people on social media to go, oh, you should vote Labour, by the way.
Yeah.
They need to get their own messages out. So by all means, use other content creators as well. But let's be honest. I mean, they've still got to like make sure that it's mutually beneficial. You're not, you can't get content creators to just like do an advert for you.
No, because it won't work. It's giving content creators access to MPs. It would be nice if we could get on Politics Social some Labour MPs to come and justify their positions on stuff. It'd be nice to get Emily Thornberry on here or someone who's a bit more progressive.
The problem now is that some of their positions are so untenable that they'd have a harsher time on my channel certainly than they will on Laura Kunzberg.
Well, yeah, maybe. Electra Gaming has just mentioning Thatcher. Go wash your mouth out, Mr. Hughes. Yeah, sorry, I apologise. I should have given a content warning. Chris C, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. How about ministers have to have the experience in the department they're in charge of, fed up of paying for advisors who seem to be out of touch? I don't think that's very realistic, to be honest with you, because then if you were a teacher, you're going to be you'll only be able to go into the Department of Education.
I would say a couple of problems with that. First of all, you could then only vote for civil servants. Secondly, so when I was a new teacher, so my first education secretary was David Blunkett, and he was decent. Labour then did get a teacher as education secretary, Estelle Morris. Now, no disrespect to her, she was not a good education secretary. So you're not necessarily, just because you've even worked in it, it sounds great because you'll understand things at like the chalk face, literally. But it doesn't necessarily mean you'd be good at running the department either.
Yeah, I get
You can be a really good administrator.
Yeah.
With that, the key is getting the right advisors.
Yeah.
That's the key skill.
Yeah.
Can you hire the people who will give you the best advice? That is the key skill.
Yeah. Darren Christian, thank you very much for the £2 super chat because you didn't make enough on Morning Brew. Thank you. we had a mega chat and a hyper chat this morning on Morning Brew, so that was just making.
It was a bit of sarcasm, was it?
A bit. Yeah. I mean, I was being a bit cheeky by saying
setting a target.
Yeah, setting targets like a terrible.
So you've already met your sales quote, and you just wanted more.
Yeah. Alistair, thank you very much for the £1 super chat, mate. That's very kind of you. And also One Angry Pagan, eco policy, the one of the only good Labour policies so far is the. Yeah,
there's lots of them. I can reel off lots of them, honestly. They're just not getting mentioned.
And Judge says, yes, Labour's communication is... Yeah, this is what we go on about all the time. Really good message here from the Witchy Goth. I have lots of trans friends. I'm a goth and a witch. So out on the fringes of society anyway. So there's a lot of goth trans women as well. Every single one of my trans friends is awesome. And yes, I completely agree. Also, something I pointed out on Facebook today, if anyone follows me on Facebook, is that we need to not call J.K. Rowling a witch. Because she is certainly not a witch. Witches are cool. She's more of a witch finder general. Kind of pointing at people and saying, burn them! Burn them! That's what she's more like. So call her a witch finder general. Or just some other horrible name, I guess. Joanna says, the problem with a lot of people who are really, really good at something, they're generally crap at running a group of people that are doing that thing. That's a very good point. Yes. Phil can name all those great policies, but no one else has ever heard of them. Yeah.
Should we go through some, shall we?
Yeah, go on.
So first of all, they have absolutely improved things on the NHS because it's not just one metric. It's not like, they've shifted a problem somewhere else to make this look better. On loads of metric, NHS are doing better. They've now passed the law, which is going to make not just water companies liable, but named executives criminally responsible for illegal dumping, as well as not doing enough to sort out the leaks. You've got so much money going into social housing and council housing now. You've got the Employment Rights Bill is going to boost workers' rights more than has ever happened in my entire lifetime. I'm nearly 49 years old. Nearly 49 years old. And there's never been a boost in workers' rights like the one that is coming now. We have got a massive expansion. I know you talked about the eco thing there, but it's not just about eco situation in terms of green energy. That is all, because it's not just needed for achieving net zero, it's also needed for actually boosting our capacity, because we have more electricity demands, not just with because we're wanting to move to electric cars, but the data centers needed to power the sort of the next wave of AI technology is all going to suck up the juice.
I've got to just stop you there because we've just had a massive super chat come in. In fact, we've had a hyper chat. Thank you so much to John C. £100. Oh my God, thank you. Thank you so much for your hard work and brilliant analysis, Graham and Phil. Oh, thank you so much, John. Phil, the money's in the post, all right? Oh, wow. Wow. Amazing stuff. And also, Butterfly Wings, thank you so much for buying 5 Politics Social memberships for Roger Devine, Sean Streeter, Shiny Warm, Jenny M, and Dave's Piece of Pod. So thank you so much, Butterfly Wings and John C. That is just incredible. Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow, 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 wow. Nick and Diff, SG, Richie Garth, Diz, Antoli, Alvone, SBJ Chief, Chef, sorry, and Saz all saying, awesome, wicked, thank you. And also Ori, and thank you very much for the super chat from Ori as well. It's just come in. You're getting your money's worth today. Well, I hope you're getting your money's worth, people who watch this channel and support us. That is really, really generous. Thank you to John C, and thank you to you all. Sorry, Phil, I completely interrupted. Right? You were talking about
electric vehicles. Community police officers, so there will be a named community officer for everyone. So if you've got a particular problem, you don't just have to run some nameless police officer and hope that they give a shit. There will be someone named who is responsible as your community plod. Haven't had that for years. We are improving. They'd already passed legislation anyway. Trump very kindly has also motivated the EU for us to work close together as well. So despite, must respect the referendum bollocks coming out of Labour, nonetheless, we are moving back towards the EU, doing exactly what we would do if we wanted to rejoin anyway. It doesn't matter what Starmer says. He's not going to be... Remember, he's like, what? Is he 61, 62 now? He's in his 60s. He's not going to be around forever. He's not going to be Prime Minister for as long as, say, Tony Blair was. Yeah. So he's got another election in him. Then partway through the next Parliament, unless he actually wants to go on for, pissing, who was the old one? Harold Macmillan, did he go on forever?
Superman.
But unless I don't think he does. So he'll be standing aside for someone else anyway.
Went away for 6 years, came back.
Yeah, he was quite old. But he's not going to do that. He's not going to be wanting to be prime minister who's pissing 70. So, and I'm not saying that necessarily the next one is better. It might be worse. We might get worse pissing streeting. But they don't have to take on board things he's said. He's just on a process here. But Labour, as soon as the conditions are right, can say, actually, do you know what? We've done all this stuff. We've been benefited from closer trade with the EU. We're now going to we just might as well join the EU so we get more of a say in it. You've got a load more super chats to do.
I know I have. I'm sorry, Phil. Optimistic Nihilist, thank you very much for the £10 super chat. This is a global trend that will worsen in the 20s and 2030s and 40s. Depoliticization deepening and accelerating amongst many and paving the way for the far right. It's our responsibility to resist and not give up. Couldn't agree more, mate. Couldn't agree more. And Toly wants to know what we think of Angela Rayner as PM. Thank you very much for the super chat there. I would feel the same way that I would about Gordon Brown being PM, or I did about Gordon Brown being PM. I feel like
she's too divisive. It's not her fault. She's like Neil Kinnock said of himself, the problem was he was too Marmite. There were people that absolutely loved him, the people that just were not going to vote for a ginger Welshman. and unfortunately, the same
bastards.
situation. There are people. Do you know what? It might come as a surprise to people, but there are some people in England that are a little bit snobbish, right? And
Yes.
yeah, so unfortunately, the face doesn't fit, nor does the voice. So no, you know, it's nothing. It's nothing against Arena herself. She would not be able to win over enough. There'll be too many reasons for voters to go, oh no, I'm not really feeling it for her. Yeah. And as we said about, you know, lizard brain, you've got it's the same thing with the Democrats. Was it wise to put up against Trump a black woman? You know, even given that lots of things went wrong.
We were talking about this with the vice president pick. We're saying they have to find the whitest, straightest man in America to be on a ticket. You know, because otherwise you wouldn't have any hope. But yeah, people. I
mean, that's you know, we'll never know what would have happened had Biden stood down or said he would stand down earlier, so the Democrats could actually have a proper think about it, and maybe Newsom would have been better.
Yeah.
You just have to, unfortunately, accept these prejudices.
Yeah. Someone said they're going to be a millionaire by the end of this chat. I don't know if we got that quote, but this is wonderful. This is fantastic. Thank you.
If you invest, you have to buy the dip.
By the tip. Alistair, thank you very much for the £20. Talk on the ground in Scotland. Labour are not getting votes from what I've been hearing. Scotland have been thinking of going back to vote SNP or are talking about voting reform because they are pissed off at the main parties. Not surprising. And something that I want to ask you, let me do one more super chat, and then I want to ask you a question about how much this is going to affect Labour versus the Tories, so don't let me forget. Questionable Absanity, thank you very much for the £2. Teachers use whiteboards, not chalk faces nowadays.
I started with a chalkboard.
So
chalk when I started.
Just to go back to the point I was going to make. Someone said in the chat earlier, I'm sorry, I didn't catch. I should have written down who it was because it went off the top of the screen. But they were asking about whether this would affect this local election. It will be a case of the Tories losing more seats than Labour. Are the Tories more exposed in this election than Labour are?
Of course they are, yeah, absolutely. The Tories did very well when these same seats were contested last time.
Yeah.
They did really, it was the vaccine bounce. They were cleaning up. They did really well in the 2021 local elections. So the Conservatives are going to have a much worse day than Labour. It's just that the Conservatives are resigned to it and Labour are not. It will hurt Labour more than the Conservatives. The Conservatives will seek to shrug it off. Now, I would argue two things. One is that even a very good Conservative leader would be facing a catastrophic local elections here, because no one could turn the party around that quickly. That being said, Kemi Badenoch has not done anything to help her party. She will be playing on the fact that we were going to get hammered in these elections anyway. There's no point in blaming me. How can you expect to turn around a party in like 6 months? And it's like, yeah, that's true. Any Tory leader would have faced a drubbing.
She's so bad at it.
But
Phil.
she is.
I want her to stay in. I want her to stay in. I want her to stay in all the way to the election because she's so crap at the job, and it's just wonderful. It's wonderful to see. She doesn't know what she's doing.
The problem is, of course, it also helps boost Reform UK. Like, arguably, if the Conservatives were doing a bit better, Labour would not be doing any better now, but the Reform UK would be doing worse, which means in the sort of league of polls, Reform UK would have no chance of sneaking ahead.
Yeah.
So there's a sense in which you don't really want the Tories to do too badly because Reform are worse. But they are. It's really, politics is very confusing at the moment.
It's just, I mean, it really is quite remarkable that the Tory party, and Labour as well, and the Democrats in America, like, no one learns from the mistakes of the past.
No,
it's like they reset every day like an old-fashioned sitcom. You know, it doesn't matter. We burnt down the house last week. We've got a new house this week because nothing matters. Nothing continues on to the next episode. And it's like,
what I find remarkable about the Democrats in particular is that I remember when Barack Obama, like, came out of nowhere to be the Democrats' candidate, and then of course won. And he did it with innovative campaigns. You know, he really tapped into sort of new ways of campaigning to draw support from quarters you wouldn't normally expect it, because he wasn't going to get it from the establishment within the Democrat Party.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, he did this for 8 years, and then when he stopped, they went back to doing it the old way of things. It's like, did you learn nothing? Like, I'm sure he would have shared his tips with you.
Yeah.
But whereas Labour have never done that well. They've never ever, they've obviously had better media representation, but they've never done social media well ever since social media. They actually, I will give, you know, Corbyn his due on this. Like, when Corbyn first became leader, they sort of at least put some effort in.
Yeah.
And they did actually go, oh, social media is quite handy. But then even they seem to like stop using it well.
Well, the media is still around, and you know, they've got like 800,000 subscribers or something mad. Do you know the connection between 7 of 9 and Obama? No. Basically, the actress who plays 7 of 9, Jerry Ryan, she was married to a guy called Jack Ryan, who I thought was out of some books, wasn't he, in The Hunt of Red October? And he was a Republican candidate for the US Senate for Illinois, and he was the favourite to win, but he was forced to drop out because of their divorce proceedings when it came out that he had forced her to go to like swingers parties and stuff, like kind of against her will, and that all came out at the same time of the primaries and everything, and they ended up putting forward some crap candidate who was never going to win against Obama. And if Obama hadn't won that seat in Illinois, he wouldn't have been able to go on to be president 4 years later. So yeah, Jerry Ryan, 7 of 9, Star Trek, changed the course of history, mate. Changed the course of history.
Well, these things do often swing on
swingers, little
foibles of fate, don't they? Everything does.
Yes, it does. But I mean, it is a source of, I don't know. We have talked about it to death on this channel, but like the Labour, the fact that they do not embrace new media. It's not even new anymore. Do you know who's celebrating their 20th anniversary this week? Anyone know? YouTube. 20 years. 20 years of YouTube. My God. This channel, you can check it out if you go to the About. It's been here since September 2006. So this channel is 19 years old in September. That is bonkers. That is objectively crazy. That's crackers. But there you go. The fact that they're just not taking this thing that is there that they can use. It's free. Anyone can pick up their phone and go, start streaming and start talking. But yeah, the communication, abysmal. Boring technocrats. Shift on trans rights. Completely alienating young and progressive voters. The seemingly just ridiculous attack on some of the most vulnerable people in our society, the disabled, saying, oh, we're going to have to cut down on how much money we give you. That'll get us more money somehow. Profit, and the cool head strategy of Labour, it doesn't half look like cowardice instead of calm. I know what they're trying to do.
No, I don't mind cowardice, because political cowardice is vote winning. That's the whole point of it. Whenever anyone says a politician needs to be brave, what they mean is lose a shitload of votes. So political cowardice is vote winning. I wouldn't mind if that's what they were doing, but they're not.
Yeah. One thing that we should talk about as well before we go is the power of Farage, because up till a few weeks before before the general election, RefUK were nowhere to be found, and then they brought him back as their leader and suddenly
no,
propelled him.
That's not what happened. That's not what happened. They were nowhere to be found when he was leader. When he was leader, they were struggling to beat UKIP after the 2019 general election. Then Richard Tice took over. I mean, it was circumstance, really. It was the Conservatives making it easy for them. But the big boost to Reform UK came with Richard Tice as leader. Then Nigel Farage decided to come back as leader literally few months before the election.
Do you think they would have got
he
those
did then give
MPs
it a boost
if they hadn't brought him back?
No, he definitely gave them a boost. They would have won MPs, yeah. They would have won Clacton with someone else. They would not necessarily have won a couple of the tight ones. There was one tight one with the Murdoch, the fellow who beat his former girlfriend, and lied about it. And so, Farage definitely gave them a boost.
Yeah.
But they weren't nowhere before. They were going to be on for winning seats without him. But, I mean, he could still come a cropper. He's got a lot of weaknesses.
Yeah.
With Trump, too much support for Trump, that looks like, I mean, that could easily go south quite quickly. Too much support for Putin. And it is the fact of the matter that he says the NHS is going to be free, but he's also on record as saying he thinks it should be turned into a private. I mean, it's like, of course you won't charge for the NHS if there's no NHS to charge for, can you? That's his plan. He'll just abolish it. Oh, I said you would be charged for the NHS. I'm going to abolish it. I will charge no one for the NHS.
Found their weakness. They're useless without their heads.
But it's there's a lot of ways in which Farage could personally come a cropper. Just this now legal fight with Rupert Lowe could cause trouble.
I hope it does.
I mean, I don't know who it'll cause trouble for, but it'll certainly cause aggro, and it will emphasise the split.
Yeah. Because
Reform UK are actively trying to appeal to moderate voters, although by getting batshit mental candidates.
Yeah.
Who keep saying things like that Hitler fella, he was sort of right, he just didn't go quite far enough.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, but bloody Ken Livingstone said that about Hitler. Oh, we just went mad. He was all right at the start. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah, but Ken Livingstone was hardly a moderate himself, was he?
Bonkers towards the end of his career. Alvone, life is all about picking the least worst option. That's what I always do.
Well, that's politics anyway.
Party or government.
Politics.
Absolutely, it is. Oliver's saying I will still vote Labour tactically. I'm still going to vote Labour. I'm just not particularly happy with the way that they are performing at the moment. There's a few policy things that I'm really concerned about, and obviously comms. And David is saying that Jerry Ryan could assimilate me anytime. That's nice. I still like normal TV, some good shows take me away from politics for a while, says Alvo. Ernie Byrne says, not pointing out the underlying stupidity and bigotry of Brexit. I think that's the original sin that has screwed a progressive Labour message. Well, hopefully we're going to be seeing, as Phil was talking about earlier, moving closer and closer to the EU.
I cannot emphasize enough what is absolutely true, and it's backed up by polling, and it's definitely backed up on the doorstep and people I've talked to. People do not want another Brexit argument right now. It caused a lot of damage. It's not it's not just a Westminster thing. This is actually out on the doorstep. What they're trying to do, even the Guardian were writing about this. I said this like a year ago. What the Guardian are now sort of writing, what Labour are trying to do is make Brussels boring again. Stop people. It didn't used to be in the news. Things used to happen with the EU. It wasn't newsworthy because it was deeply dull. And it's everything's got interesting now. I mean, it's like, trade news is in the mainstream news, and it shouldn't be. It should be boring.
I mean, who would make a movie about someone blockading trade routes?
Well,
Star Wars Episode 3 is back in theatres this week, by the way.
So that's what they're trying to do. They're just trying to make it as dull as possible. Now, there's going to come a point where one of those red lines has to be breached, because we're going to get to a point where we've done everything we can do and reach those red lines. Now, at that point, yes, if we don't actually push further on, then we're basically accepting that we're okay with economic decline. But while we've still got things we can agree with the EU that will incrementally move us closer anyway, then, and it doesn't piss anyone off, then we'll just do those. So we'll just do it bit by bit.
Finally, before we push off for the afternoon, can we stress quite a lot of like how few people vote in local elections? We have turnout to like 29%.
Yeah. 20%.
The winners win by literally 3 votes because there's so few of them. They can count them in, like one person can count them in about 20 minutes. I would really, really recommend heading over to stopthetories.vote, having a look what the tactical vote is, and if it is Labour, hold your nose. If it's Lib Dems and you're still pissed off with them for joining the Tories in 2010, hold your nose. If it's the Greens and you're still pissed off with them for being a bit useless, hold your nose.
Useless? I'll tell you what, I can be pissed off at them. I'm trying to give reasons for it.
Go on.
They are the Green Party, and yet they have manifesto promises which they have retained in this Parliament of making fossil fuels cheaper and green energy more expensive. So, but at the end of the day, it's still better than the Tories.
Still better than the Tories. Still better than RefUK.
Every mile's better.
If you can get your mates down the pub or your footy team or your neighbours to go out and vote one way or the other and all go as a block, honestly, 5 votes might make the difference. Like, seriously.
Just promise to buy your mates a pint. We'll go out and vote and I'll get you a pint on the way back.
Absolutely. I think that's the way it's got to be done. And I feel like Labour should. I don't know. I just find it a bit weird that I get this letter like literally a week before the election saying, we need to get people more involved in the campaign.
But they are. Someone's making the point there about James O'Brien said apparently, instead of call it freedom of movement, refer to it as liberty of motion. But Labour are trying to sort of do things like this, not something that silly. But for example, like the youth mobility scheme, they're just calling it something different. Yeah. So like Nick Thomas Simmons, who's effectively our Brexit minister now, has written a piece in the article where he said, and he's talking about the referendum, but he's also been talking about, it's not in our plans to have a youth mobility scheme, when it totally is. They're just going to call it something different, and they'll call it something different because I don't know. The numbers are going to be capped. They're capped. They're quite often capped anyway. It doesn't matter. I don't care. I don't care what it's called. I care what it is. And that's what they'll do. And the thing is as well, people are worrying about this, the cap on the youth mobility thing. The reason for that is, of course, because like from Yvette Cooper's point of view, Keir Starmer said, you need to reduce net migration. And then he's come along and says, by the way, we want to invite a load of people in from Europe. And she's gone, you fucking mental, mate.
But we include students in the immigration numbers.
I think
them off.
It's mental.
Just get rid of them. Mental. Just take them out of the numbers, and then suddenly the numbers magically go down. That's what they did. The Tories did this with crime. They made fraud not a crime that got put in the crime numbers. So the crime's gone down low.
The problem is, of course, the media didn't point that out, whether they'll point this out. But either way, that's what I would do anyway. I would make the point that there are, and I would have this argument with the public, because the public will agree with it. There are types of immigration that are just people coming into the country spending money. They're not taking your jobs. Yeah. They're just coming into the country taking money.
I did a whole thing about that this morning, about America shutting off its borders to tourism and just how ridiculously self-defeating that is. Because it's people coming from other countries to spend their money that they've earned in another country in your country. Open the floodgates, let them in.
Everything is self-defeating that they're doing. I've done a video on it for this afternoon. It's absolutely spectacular.
When my Australian girlfriend came to live with me in the UK, and she had an ancestral visa to start with for 4 years, and then she got a young person's visa or something for another 2 years. And both of those visas said in her passport, no recourse to public funds. That was it. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like,
well, they do. Like, why do people think when you go to the hospital you have to give your NHS number?
Yeah.
Like, why do you think that? Why do you think that they have to identify who you are? It's because not everyone's eligible.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Sfax says, just vote against RefUK, and if possible, Tories. Anyone else would be better or much better. But what I'm saying is, don't necessarily vote with who you want to win. You need to vote on who's going to beat the Tories.
I mean, there's
exactly what you said in the general election as well. I mean,
there are 3 types of candidate in any election. There's the one that might win, that's your preferred option. There's the one that might win that you absolutely do not want to win. And then there's the ones who are not going to win. Now, if you're going to vote for someone who is not going to win, then absolutely use your vote in every way you like. And I'd prefer it if people just voted, even if they spoiled their ballot. But if you're voting for someone who is not going to win, you are just spoiling your ballot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, again, one of the best things Starmer ever said, the thing that will actually, for me, put him in the pantheon of political speakers for one thing, was a few years ago when he said at conference, party of protest or party of power. And because it is a choice, like you can decide to complain about things, or you can decide to try and change it to the best of your ability. You cannot always do both at the same time. So you have to prioritize what is more important, political purity or getting the best outcome you can possibly get.
Keeping the fascists out. And make no mistake, RefUK are fascists. They just are. They are backed by the same foreign billionaires who back Trump. Vote Farage, get Trump.
And
get
as I
Musk,
say,
get Putin.
A lot of some of the terrible things the Conservatives do, a lot of them go along with it strategically, whereas the candidates Reform UK are putting up are proper mental.
Yes, they
are
racist,
hateful monsters. And I'll tell you another thing as well. I'll tell you another thing that's just coming out, a report that says because the vast majority of Reform UK's candidates are male, no fucking surprise, it's actually going to worsen the gender balance if they do well.
Yeah. But yeah, we've established that the political discourse at the moment is all about being horrible to minorities, not really about women's rights. Russell Cannon, thank you very much for the £10 super chat. Why isn't more made of RefUK and the Conservatives' intention to leave the European Court of Human Rights? That should worry everyone. It's something that I mentioned quite a lot on this channel. Because I guess there's some forces that want us to leave the European Court of Human Rights.
There certainly are, the ones who want to make a load of money out of a country that doesn't have any human rights.
Yeah. So that's what they want to happen. And the whole war on trans people, as the war on the EU was started just so we could get out the EU to make more money for people who want to take away people's rights in this country.
Yeah.
The same method. It's just you pick a particular thing that you can get some people on the left to join. That's what the whole thing was with Europe. There were Lexiters as well as Brexiters. There were people who hate trans people. There's people on the left who hate trans people.
Yeah.
For no good reason, because they believe that they're good feminists and that's why they have to hate trans people. But they're going to do this. It's going to go to the European Court of Human Rights. It's going to get knocked back by them. They're going to say you're going to have to have a look at this again because this is nonsense.
Or something
along those lines, and that will allow RefUK and the Tories and Murdoch and Barclay and Rothermere and all these ghouls hanging around the periphery of our kingdom, the real deep state, right? The actual deep state that exists that you can actually see. And they're going to use it as a tool to say we need to get out of the European Court of Human Rights. Because how can this foreign court, a term used by the Tories in Parliament and not corrected? There was a Labour MP once who corrected them. He said it's not a foreign court because it's not a foreign court. We're part of Europe. So how can a European Court of Human Rights be a foreign court? It's our court.
British judge sitting on it.
Yeah, exactly. And it was set up mostly by the British as well. But then again, the EU, the current setup of the EU, obviously, it existed before Britain joined in 1973. But the modern version that we have of the EU was very, very heavily influenced by British people. In fact, Article 50 was written by a British judge. Or maybe not a judge, maybe a lawyer. Questionable obscenity. Thank you very much for the £2 super chat. Can Phil do a video policy analysis on the Greens? Would you do that?
The problem is, I would then have to mention their lack of green credentials, and people would just think that was me being bitchy, which it probably would be. Because you got to remember, I'm not Labour because someone, the sorting hat didn't say, oh yes, you should be in Labour. I choose to be. I'm not anymore, but I still align with them. I choose to align with them. So that is still where my politics are. So, the Greens, there are people on the left that I don't think are helpful to the cause, but I understand who the real enemies are, and it's the far right. So I don't make a big deal about it. It's not that I deliberately don't. I mean, if the Green Party gave me something to talk about, I'd be more than happy to. But they don't really give you anything apart from the only thing they keep presenting is, we should be, and I'm not kidding, we should make it harder to set up public transport, and we should make it more expensive to set up green energy by pissing cables underground. That's what they keep pushing. It's not my fault what they keep pushing. Question there, would I ever rejoin Labour? Absolutely. as soon as they don't make my job difficult, because I'm going to have to promote tactical voting quite a lot now for the Labour have this stupid attitude of going, we don't like tactical voting, we're going to threaten to kick people out of the party if they support tactical voting.
Out the party.
Well, they haven't kicked people out of the party for promoting tactical voting. They've kicked people out of the party for saying you should vote Lib Dem or you should vote Green in this place. That is against party rules. I get that. However, they have still put people under investigation, and yet they're supporting an electoral system which requires, because first past the post only works if there are two candidates.
Yeah.
It only works if there are two, but there's not. There's loads of parties in this country, which means there's loads of candidates. Even in my mayoral election, there's 6 pissing candidates here.
Yeah.
So tactical voting is essential. And so that's really the main reason. The trans thing was just the straw that broke the camel's back for me. So that'll just cost them a few £1,000s a year in donations because I won't get the emails now. But yeah, if it's I've left them before. I mean, when I left them over the Iraq war, that was a strictly policy issue. Then I came back when they were no longer doing that.
I didn't vote for them in 2005 because of that. I remember when I
did vote for them because I didn't want the Tories.
The first time I had a run-in with Owen Jones at the Labour Party conference a couple of years ago, he was having a go at me for not always voting. He said, "You always voted?" I said, "No, I stood against him in 2017." And I've stood as a Lib Dem councillor in Liverpool. I've also, when my very first time of voting in 1997, I voted nationally for Labour. I voted locally for the Lib Dems because the Labour Council, with we'd had the militant lot in the 1980s and Derek Hatton and all those gobshites. They'd done the dash. And we managed to get them out. It was Lib Dem in Liverpool from 97 to 2010, I think. We had a Lib Dem council, and they were great days. Like, Liverpool did really well under a Lib Dem leadership, and then it went back to Labour, and we got Joe Anderson, who's a crook, who's probably going to go to jail for being a crook.
Yeah,
and nothing's finished. There's potholes are everywhere. Everything that we got built in, the early 2000s it's all going to rack and ruin because there's no maintenance. So, yeah, I mean, I'm a political slut. I will take, whoever's going to give me the best ride. I don't care. I just don't want the Tories in. I just don't want RefUK. I don't want any I don't want any Nazis.
From 2010, councils did lose a lot of money.
Yes, they did. That is very true, but that doesn't justify Joe Anderson's corruption.
No, it doesn't justify criminality.
And Joanna Anderson, who replaced him, the black woman who replaced him, when he regenerated, she pissed me off from the start by when we lost our UNESCO World Heritage status in Liverpool. She said, "Oh, who cares about a trophy on the wall, a certificate?" And I'm like, and then she tried to get this false dichotomy of either you can be a living city or you can be a UNESCO World Heritage site. So you can either be, stuck in a cast of amber, or you can actually progress the city. And it's not true. It is not true. There are so many cities. There are entire islands around the world that are UNESCO World Heritage sites. It's fine. You can still build new stuff. It just has to be in keeping. That's all. But there you go. Anyway, we've gone way over time. We're 23 minutes over time. People are getting their money's worth today, I hope. But yeah, is there anything else that you want to say before the election on Thursday, May the 1st?
I mean, again, my argument is always that politics is not about what you want. It is about what is the best you can get, or the what you least oppose sometimes. So I would recommend people go out and vote. People can be pretty apathetic when you don't feel that the person you're going to have to vote for is giving you enough reason, or the party, the candidate may be fine, or they may not. They may be a dickhead. I will vote for a dickhead in a red rosette. Sometimes I don't even bother to find out if they're a dickhead or not. And it's just the way it is, because there is no policy, even the bad policies that Labour have, that the Conservatives did not intend worse. And they intend to screw lots of other people over as well. In fact, everyone, apart from themselves. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the way I would look at it. As some people look at local elections as giving a punch on the nose to the government, as a bit of a warning shot. The problem here, if it was just between Labour and the Conservatives, you'd go, whatever, be their own fault. But in this particular case, there's a couple of problems. First of all, Labour are actually doing a lot of really good stuff. I've seen someone try to use the neoliberal term completely incorrectly again twice there. This is what Labour are doing is the opposite of neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is a shrinking of the state. They are expanding the state massively. There's a huge program. I mean, I didn't even go through my list of all the stuff Labour are doing. Biggest nationalisation program of my life as well. But the other thing is, it's going to give succor to Reform UK.
Yes.
Going to let Reform... People think that Reform UK are a mainstream option for government, and that is a very dangerous thing to do just to spite Labour because they've got some bad policies.
Yeah.
And it is unfortunate. It is shit that you're basically having to say to someone, well, hang on, they've shit on me or they've shit on my friends, and I still have to vote for them. It's like, yeah, because they'll shit on your friends even more if you don't. And that is unfortunately the reality of the situation.
Well, they won't.
Life and politics is never fair.
Yeah. It's just not fair. Anyway, so please do vote on Thursday. Find out who the best person to vote for, who will beat RefUK or beat the Tories. I don't know if I should really say this, but I would, if the situation here, and thank God it isn't, but the situation where I lived was that we would either get a RefUK or a Tory. I will vote for the Tory.
The thing is as well, in that particular case, though,
no, you can't have your super chats back.
The Conservatives will actually only get worse if Reform UK do well. They will only get worse.
Yeah. But RefUK they are Trump. They are MAGA.
If you were to look at some of their candidates as well, they proper believe it.
Well,
a lot of Conservatives are not happy with what their party's done. It's not an excuse, but they're not happy with it, and they think it's strategic. Just like Labour with the trans issue, they're just wrong. Reform UK really believe it. They really believe in shitting on people.
They do.
They are very, very focused on this idyllic idea of Little England. And anyone who doesn't quite fit into it should. They are. MAGA. Some of them are openly pro mass deportations. Never mind anti-immigration. People that they think are not properly British. They might have family going back to the 16th century, but it doesn't matter because they're not white. Or if they are white, they're Irish or something. They're not Anglo-Saxon. And they want them removed from the country to a country they've never visited before. The whole Windrush thing on a grand scale.
Yeah, absolute scum. Absolute. So one of the silver linings to all this is a lot of those RefUK councillors will probably lose their jobs very soon after being elected because of the shit that's going to come out about them. Because once they're elected, it's going to be like, oh, remember when you wrote this thing that was actually against the law for you to write? So hopefully a lot of them will be yeeted out of office. But then,
some people. I know some Tories are thinking, well, maybe you lance the boil by just letting them. Well, not letting them win, but if they win, show that they're crap and the rest of it. I think to myself, if there's a party that actually benefits from being crap, it's Reform UK, because they benefit from life being crap, so they won't lift a finger to help anyone.
Yeah.
And they will just blame the government.
Yeah, or immigrants or trans people or whoever else.
Yeah, well, they'll just blame the government because they will. So they will actually benefit. I don't think there's any lancing the boil by them winning. I think that it's in their interest. They can blame the government because people don't know what a council. They sort of know the bins are a council's job, but generally speaking, they don't know. Like even potholes is a council job, but not a lot of people know that because the government keep talking about pissing potholes as well. So it confuses the issue. People don't know what the government's job is. They don't know what the council's job is. Yeah. Some people have more than one pissing council. I mean, that is being dealt with. They don't know what the mayor's job is. Round here, this is the first time we're getting a metro mayor. So no one knows what her job is. Like I say her, unfortunately, it's probably going to be her. No one knows what it is. She will take advantage of that and just blame everything on the government.
Yeah.
And anything that's happened that the government actually do, she'll claim credit for.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna leave it at that. Before we go, big shout out to GOJ. Thank you very much for the £5 super chat. Had this conversation with my partner at lunch. Labour member, but would vote Tory to keep reform out locally if necessary. And I think there's a few people in the chat going, oh, God, I'd hate to have to do that, but I would because it's keeping the Nazis out.
you've got to have a very, very, in all of life, but definitely politics, a very, very fixed priority list in your head.
Yeah.
Because life does throw things at you, and you just, good decision making is a constant evaluation of what is the priority.
Alvone says, voting Labour, you lose £100. Voting Tory, you lose £500. What's better? Exactly. So yeah, if nothing else, this is the pragmatic politics channel. Even though sometimes you just want to make a protest, but councils can affect people's lives and people's chances of getting somewhere better. And if they don't have the local resources to do that, then it's very difficult to get out of the situation that you're in. And with a bunch of foreign residents, billionaires backing RefUK, I don't think they're going to have your
they can
best interests at heart, especially
a load of councillors and a mayor who want to screw over. They can cause a lot of damage to a local economy.
Yeah,
if they need
exactly. And that's the worry. And probably going to be jobs for the boys as well, isn't it?
Oh, that's always the case with councils anyway. I mean, that's
Okay, well, on that
is the case for councils.
Big shout out to everyone in the chat and everyone who's given a super chat, especially John C. Thank you, mate. That was really, really kind of you. Big thank you to Phil Moorhouse of A Different Bias. If you haven't already subscribed to Phil's channel, please do so. I'll be back at 9:30 this evening for the Friday night social, and I just want to say until then, give us a like on the way out if you can. That'd be nice. But whether you give us a like or not, I just want to say thank you very much for watching. Hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.